Hello, dreamer. Welcome to Sleepy History Cafe, your evening cup of calm where we slow down, settle in, and let history sing us to sleep. Imagine yourself in a quiet room. A soft light glows nearby, casting warm amber shadows across the walls. The hum of the world outside fades gently, and in its place, only stillness and the rustle of pages from a story long buried beneath the ice. Tonight, we'll journey softly into the cold, quiet corners of history, where whispers of wonder and frost-bound expeditions drift gently through time. As you settle into stillness, imagine the air crisp and silent, where every sound is muffled by snow and every breath is met with a puff of frozen mist. The year is 1947. The place, a vast white emptiness near the South Pole. A name begins to echo through the corridors of conspiracy and curiosity. Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd, a man of discipline, a man of science, but some say, a man who went far beyond the known world. You may have heard of Agartha, this mythical realm said to exist inside the earth. Glowing cities, gentle beings, a hidden sun. But before those stories rise from the ice, before the whispers and journals and strange transmissions, there was daily life. There was preparation. There was the rhythm of survival. So, close your eyes if you'd like. Let your thoughts wander like snowflakes drifting in the wind. And together, we'll walk softly through a life once lived in silence and secrets. Let's begin with a world not of hollow earths, but of hollow winds and heavy boots. The routines of men stationed at the edge of the world. Imagine yourself standing on a frozen plain. There is no horizon, only white. The sound is nearly nothing, a low hum of wind, a distant cracking of ice. This is Antarctica, and this was home, for a time, to Admiral Byrd and his crew. Their lives were governed not by clocks, but by cold. The sun, when it was there, moved differently, slowly, often not at all. Mornings began in dimness, not from sunrise, but from the hum of generators and the clang of iron stoves being stirred. Imagine the scent of kerosene mixing with metal, oil, and a faint aroma of preserved food warming over a flame. Before the mystery of Agartha, Byrd was a man of extreme routine. He believed that discipline could preserve sanity, that order was warmth in a world ruled by ice. The men woke in layers of wool, their faces cold, even beneath blankets. They slept fully dressed, just in case the temperature dropped lower than expected, which it often did. Coffee was more than comfort, it was necessity. Brewed bitter and strong, it cut through the fatigue of endless white. Meals were rationed, carefully inventoried. Canned meats, powdered eggs, hardtack biscuits softened in hot broth. The food wasn't pleasant, but in the cold, it didn't need to be. Each man had a duty. Some maintained the sled dogs, fur-covered creatures whose breath fogged the air in ghostly clouds. Others monitored radio signals, tapping gently into static-filled conversations with the outside world. Byrd himself kept a journal. He was meticulous, thoughtful, and strangely poetic. Even his notes about weather patterns or equipment malfunctions carried a tone of calm observation. Temperature falling steadily, he once wrote. Winds increasing. Ice on instruments again. The stove holds. Imagine him now, seated at a small wooden desk, a lantern swaying gently above, his pencil moving steadily across the page. Outside, the world roared in silence. There were routines for bathing, too, if you could call them that. No showers, of course. A metal basin, a heated kettle, a cloth dipped and wrung. Cleanliness was not comfort, but morale. Evenings brought rest, but not true stillness. The cold could crack wood. The wind could slam doors. But inside, there was laughter sometimes.
Wow.
Quiet jokes, shared stories, the creak of bunks as men rolled over in their sleep. They read books aloud, shared memories of home. Some stared at frozen photographs of loved ones tucked in makeshift frames. One man, no one remembers his name, would hum an old song before sleep, just loud enough to hear, just soft enough to soothe. The night in Antarctica is not dark. It is silver and blue, endless yet close, still but humming beneath your thoughts. And this was life. Before legends, before the hollow earth. There was frost on boots, paper-thin blankets, a stove that held, and a man who recorded everything as though someone, someday, might listen. We are listening now. Soft wind fades in and out. Gentle instrumental music transitions the listener forward. Let the cold fade for a moment. Imagine instead the quiet of a study, paper stacked neatly, maps rolled into tubes, a worn leather chair, and a man who rarely stopped thinking. Before he was the whispered name in conspiracy circles, before he was said to have flown into the earth, Richard Evelyn Byrd was simply a boy from Virginia. Born in 1888 into a well-respected family, Byrd was raised in a world that prized discipline, duty, and quiet pride. His early life was not glamorous, nor was it loud. He was studious, polite, focused. Even as a boy, he kept detailed notebooks. He mapped his neighborhood, charted stars, made quiet observations about the world. You can imagine him, can't you? A young boy on a porch in winter, breath puffing in the cold, charting constellations above the bare trees, a pencil in his gloved hand, a lantern flickering beside him. Even then, he leaned into silence. His journey toward polar exploration began in the U.S. Navy. He was ambitious in a calm, steady way. Where others charged forward, Byrd calculated. He prepared. He planned. He was known not for brashness, but for relentless precision. His first great expedition came in the 1920s. Byrd claimed to have flown over the North Pole in 1926, a feat that made headlines around the world. Though the claim would later be questioned, the effect was immediate. Byrd was now a national figure, a gentleman explorer, a symbol of quiet American courage. He was not flamboyant, not theatrical. Where others gave rousing speeches, Byrd spoke slowly, thoughtfully. He wrote often. He preferred solitude. His journals tell us more than interviews ever could. In them we see a man who found peace in vastness, who met danger with detachment, and who longed for places untouched by noise. Imagine reading his notes now, his handwriting slanting gently across yellowing paper. "The wind sings at night," he once wrote during an expedition. "It reminds me of 1,000 flutes. Loneliness is not cruel here. It is clean." There was something about Byrd that never quite settled into ordinary society. He returned from his journeys, but a part of him always seemed to stay behind. Even as he stood in halls of power, testifying before Congress, shaking hands with presidents, his mind was often elsewhere. Back where the snow never melted, where silence was a companion, and where, some say, he saw something few men ever have. By the 1940s, Byrd had become more than an explorer. He was a symbol of something deeper, curiosity without noise, bravery without spectacle. It was during this later chapter that Operation High Jump was launched in 1946-47, an enormous U.S. Navy mission to Antarctica. Officially, its purpose was training and research, but whispers would soon say otherwise. Byrd led the operation. His reputation made him the perfect figurehead, respected, intelligent, reserved. But something happened. In the years that followed, rumors emerged. A flight beyond the pole, a message in his journal, and a meeting. Not with men from another country, but another world. Whether you believe it or not, the story begins here, with a man of habit, honor, and quiet, a man who sought solitude and may have found far more. Fade to soft wind again, perhaps now joined by a deeper, slower hum, suggesting something beneath the surface. We've learned of his routines. We've stepped into his world. Now, let us drift into the mystery. The wind fades now, and in its place, something even quieter. The stillness before a whisper. The pause before a strange idea enters the room and politely asks to be believed. There are stories in history that do not ask for your certainty. They only ask that you listen. Agartha. A name like a sigh on the wind. Neither proven nor fully denied. Not quite myth, not quite geography. For centuries, Scattered myths and philosophies have described a world beneath our own, not simply caves, but vast, hollow realms with cities, forests, civilizations untouched by time or war. Some say Agartha was spoken of in ancient Buddhist texts. Others trace it through theosophy or through the journal entries of dreamers and occultists. But in our story tonight, it is connected to just one man, Admiral Byrd, and a single flight. The year was 1947. Operation High Jump was underway, a massive deployment of ships, aircraft, and equipment to Antarctica. Officially, a military exercise. Unofficially, it became the fertile ground from which legends grew. According to the story, Byrd flew beyond the South Pole, farther than expected, and what he saw was not more ice, but green valleys, a warm light in the sky, mammoth-like creatures walking the plains, and machines not like our own, hovering soundlessly in the air. Some say Byrd's plane was guided, not by instruments, but by unseen forces, that he landed and met with beings, tall, calm, radiant, not alien, but inner, from within. He described in a journal that surfaced decades later, "We have let you enter here because you are of noble character. Our world is not your world, but we have watched yours." They warned him, the story says, of Earth's warlike nature, of nuclear weapons, of our noisy, frightened species. And then they let him go, back through the passage, back into the cold, back to the world above. Was it true? That question is like a snowflake. It melts when held too tightly. Perhaps Byrd never wrote that journal. Perhaps he never saw those things. Or perhaps what he saw was not meant to be believed, only remembered by a few. What we do know is this: after Operation High Jump, Byrd grew quieter. His public statements became more guarded. He hinted, gently, at forces beyond our understanding. At a press conference, he once said, "The greatest threat may come from the polar regions." He never said why. He didn't need to, knowing those who heard already believed. And so, Agartha, whether real or imagined, became a place of wonder, a sanctuary beneath the storms, a mirror world where peace endured and ancient knowledge remained intact. Imagine it now. If only for sleep, a tunnel beneath the snow, a soft light that grows warmer as you descend, the scent of flowers where none should bloom, and a voice, kind, calm, welcoming you home. Soft music plays, echoing like a lullaby from deep within the earth. Next, we'll leave the myths and return to the surface, but not to the camps and cold routines we saw earlier. We'll walk instead among the men in tailored suits, the admirals, the scientists, the skeptics, the silent believers, those who knew more than they shared. The soundscape shifts gently. No longer windswept. Now, footsteps in polished corridors, the distant murmur of voices behind closed doors, the soft rustle of paper on mahogany desks. Imagine yourself now in Washington, D.C., in a long, quiet room paneled with dark wood. A globe spins slowly in the corner. Light filters through thick curtains. Here, the chill of Antarctica is replaced with something else. Formality. Diplomacy. The controlled temperature of important things being left unsaid. Byrd returned from Operation High Jump in early 1947. Publicly, he was honored, respected, admired, but privately, some say he was changed. He gave interviews, wrote briefings, but the most curious thing was how little he seemed to say. Though Operation High Jump had involved over 4,000 men, 13 ships, and nearly 30 aircraft, its official reports were vague. The mission had ended early, no thorough explanation given. Some whispered that the expedition had encountered resistance. Others claimed aircraft were lost under mysterious circumstances, and Byrd said little. In one Chilean newspaper, El Mercurio, Byrd was quoted, "In case of a new war, the United States must be prepared to defend itself against planes that can fly from pole to pole." That line was never repeated in official records, but it never quite went away either. Within military circles, Byrd remained respected, but was no longer widely consulted. He served quietly, observed from a distance. His last major expedition took place a decade later, in the International Geophysical Year of 1957. It was scientific, collaborative, and uneventful. When Byrd passed away in 1957, he left behind medals, journals, and neatly folded uniforms. But he also left silences, pauses in conversations, questions tucked like letters into drawers that no one quite dared to open. Imagine again that long, quiet room in Washington. A file marked "confidential" slid into a cabinet. A curious memo folded back into its envelope. The soft click of a lock. The truth, if there is one, may rest not in proof, but in pattern. The world's great mysteries often leave no footprints, only a shift in tone, a glance that lasts too long, a question not answered, but also not denied. And so, Agartha remains, not just a place in legends, but a space in our thinking, a margin, a maybe, a moment we cannot quite explain. It is fitting, isn't it, that the quietest man in the coldest place should leave behind the warmest mystery. Byrd did not speak in riddles. He simply did not finish the sentence, and so others finished it for him. Fade to soft string music, distant, like it's being played behind a heavy curtain. We've walked now from snow to silence, from canned rations to coded phrases, from sled dogs to state secrets, and still, there is one more path to take, the one that leads back home. The music is almost gone now, just a soft hum remains, like the fading of a dream before waking, or the beginning of sleep before memory. And now we return, not with answers, not with certainty, but with something gentler, perspective. You have walked slowly through white silence. You have stood beside men who melted snow to drink, who rationed sugar, who listened to the wind like it was an old friend. You've met a man who preferred the cold to chaos, who sought out places where silence wasn't a void, but a refuge. Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd was not loud. He was not dramatic. He did not shout the things he saw or thought he saw. Instead, he wrote them down, folded the pages, slipped them between the covers of time. And maybe that's why we still listen. Because when something is whispered, it often lingers longer than when it is shouted. The story of Agartha is not one you must believe. It is one you are simply invited to sit with, to imagine, to wander through as you drift farther inward. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. But what matters, here, now, is that it gave you a quiet place to rest in, a place with glowing caverns, soft lights, and the kind of silence that doesn't frighten, but comforts. As you lay still now, under blankets instead of canvas, beside gentle warmth instead of a roaring stove, you can remember that even in the coldest places, there were stories, and people, and routines that brought meaning to the quiet. The past may be heavy with mystery, but the present is light with peace. So rest easy now. Let the story dissolve like snow under sun. Let your breath soften. Let the questions float away. And if you dream, perhaps you'll walk beneath the earth, or stand beside Byrd at the edge of the unknown, or simply drift without need for answers into a deeper sleep. Good night from the past. Good night from the quiet. Good night from the world beneath. Thank you for letting our stories keep you company tonight. If you drifted off to the rhythm of the past, don't forget to like, subscribe to Sleepy History Cafe, and leave a calming comment. You are always welcome here.